Hi everyone, welcome to our Restore and Rebuild class here at BODHI. My name is Alex Nashton and this is Chris Yates. Tonight we're going to be moving through a 45-minute long yin and nidra practice. So for tonight you're going to want to have 2 blocks handy. If you don't have blocks nearby, don't worry about it, just use whatever you've got. I usually say old shoe boxes work, or even some old DVD sets, or even just some really thick textbooks that you stack one on top of the other. Those will be pretty good substitutes as blocks. And then you're going to want to have something really cushiony for underneath your knees, like a pillow or a bolster if you have a bolster at home. And then when we get to the nidra portion of tonight's practice, you're also going to want to have a blanket nearby, just because as our bodies start to cool down, it's nice to have something to keep the heat in. Other than that, I think we're ready to get started. So you're going to set up in a child's pose to begin today's practice, which means that big toes of the feet come to touch. Your knees can either be close together like mine are, or you can take them pretty wide apart. Know that as they come wide apart, it's going to create more of a back bend in your spine. The closer together your knees are, the more it's going to become a forward fold. So it really just depends on what you think you're needing today. And we use this practice to cultivate this Sanskrit idea of ishta, or individualization. So know that what your body is needing tonight is going to be completely different from what anybody else is going to need. So if you've been feeling super hyper, maybe even super flighty and even a little ungrounded, it would be a good idea to find more of a forward fold like Chris is demonstrating, where the knees are in close towards each other. That just enables the lower back to release and turns on more of a parasympathetic nervous system response. However, if you've been feeling a little more lethargic, maybe even a little down or a little depressed, it would be a good idea to keep your knees wider apart, just because putting that back bend into the spine ever so slightly enables us to activate more of a sympathetic nervous system response. It helps us cultivate a little more energy. And so throughout today's practice, we're going to be kind of looking at this duality between sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system in every single shape. And you'll begin to adjust your practice accordingly based on what you need, whether that's calming yourself down or energizing yourself. So I'll give you some time here. If you opted to take this position with knees together, I want you to focus on lengthening your exhale. But if you opted to take this position with knees apart, I want you to focus on lengthening each inhale. And so whenever we work to open up the front line of the body, we're deepening the breath in, we're accentuating that natural opening and expansion of the front line. And vice versa, every time we breathe out, especially if you're already finding yourself in a little bit of a forward fold here, you're lengthening each exhale and accentuating that curvature of the spine. Now, on your own time, you'll slide the palms of your hands forward to the ground in front of you if they weren't there already. You'll stretch your hands open, press down through every single finger knuckle, and then slide yourself up onto all fours. And once you're on all fours, you can just kind of start to stir your body around, maybe arching and rounding your spine like a cat-cow shape, or maybe just circling out the rib cage, rolling out the head and neck. You move really just in any way that you feel compelled to move, any way that you might need to warm yourself up, to wake up a bit more. to iron out any kinks in your spine from the course of the day. And once you've worked to really iron out those kinks, you'll come into stillness, still on all fours, and you're gonna step your right foot forward to the outside of your right hand. So your stance is a bit wider than it normally would be. You'll look down at your right foot, and now many of us here tend to turn the right toes out, almost like we would in malasana or squat pose. But I want to focus today on opening the back of the pelvis and widening the sacrum. So I want you to think about turning your toes in ever so slightly so your foot can come into more of an anatomical neutral, so your heel can be out just as wide as your second or third toe. And then from this position, you'll curl the left toes under, so you'll curl the back toes under, lift the back knee up, and then slide the ball of the left foot back a little bit further. So once again, you're lengthening out your stance. Once that stance is a bit longer than you would normally take a lunge shape, you're gonna drop your left knee down again. Note that if it's already uncomfortable for you to have your knee on the ground, if it's feeling a little sensitive or a little tender, you're gonna wanna cushion underneath that knee with a pillow or a blanket or a bolster if you have a bolster at home. And now I'll give you some options once again. If, very similar to that first child's pose position, you're finding that you're a little too hyper tonight, you're a little too energized, maybe even a little frazzled, it would be a good idea to give yourself permission to kind of lean forward and down into this shape. So you could do that either just by dropping your pelvis forward and down, or maybe by lowering your forearms down to the floor or onto blocks. And then you can let the back of your head and the back of your neck relax here, and give your spine permission to round. Now, make sure you haven't lost track of what's happening in this back leg and this left leg. So the pinky toenail of the left foot stays rooted down, the heel of the left foot revolves outward. If in the beginning of the practice you were finding that you were a little too heavy, that you were feeling a little too lethargic and you needed to energize and activate your nervous system a bit more, then I want you to either keep the palms of your hands on the ground or optionally take your hands up onto blocks and lift your chest up towards the sky. So I'll demonstrate that one just to kind of give you an example. So Chris is leaning forward and down, but I'm kind of working to lift up, to widen my collarbones further apart and find space across the front of the chest. And so in this position, once again, you're accentuating the part of the breath that is working with the arching or rounding of your spine. So if you were in more of a folded forward position like Chris is right now, you're focusing on lengthening each exhale. But if you are in more of a back-bended shape like I was demonstrating, you're gonna focus on lengthening your inhale. And I'll give you just a little more time here. If you've never taken a yin style class before, we tend to move pretty slowly here. We tend to hold our positions for extended periods of time. And that holding enables us to move more into the joint space of the body, to open the fascia rather than the muscle. And so while this practice is very slow and in turn very still, it's also a practice that helps us find more mobility, to find a greater range of motion than we would in a normal asana class. So you'll take one more breath in here and one more breath out. And when you get to the bottom of your exhale, you'll press down through the palms of your hands if they weren't on the ground already, lift your chest up, and then you can very gently sweep your right knee back to meet your left knee so you're on all fours again. From all fours, you're gonna step your left foot up to the outside of your left hand. You'll curl your right toes under, lift your right knee up for a moment, and then see if you can ever so slightly slide the ball of the right foot further back. At that point, you'll drop your right knee down and untuck your toes. Beautiful. And once again, if you are needing a little more energy tonight, if you're needing to be a little more activated, a little more inspired, you stay on your hands or you take blocks underneath your hands to lift up your chest. But if you are needing to unwind, if you're needing to deeply relax, you're going to either stay with your hands on the ground and focus on letting the back of your neck lengthen, giving your upper body permission to kind of cave forward, or you can take forearms down to the floor, or maybe even all the way down onto blocks. And in case you already forgot, you're noticing which part of your body is accentuated by your breath and working to lengthening it out just a little bit more. Make sure your pelvis is dropping forward and down here, whatever position you've landed in, and that there's integrity in the back leg. So the pinky toenail of your right foot is anchored all the way down. Your heel is kind of spinning away from center, giving you lots of space across the back of the pelvis and the back of the sacrum. You're still breathing. And then you'll take one more breath in this shape, and one more breath out. You'll press down through the palms of your hands, begin to lift your chest up. You'll slide your left knee back to meet your right knee, so once again you find yourself on all fours. Good. And then once you're on all fours, you can take a moment to circle your hips over your knees, maybe to arch and round your spine once again, to move in any way that you feel called to move. Nice. And then in your own time, you'll tuck your toes under and push your hips up and back into a downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And we'll make this a very transitional downward facing dog. So you'll press down through the palms of your hands. You'll press down through every single finger knuckle, especially the space between your thumb and your first finger, and work to elevate your hips even more. Take a breath in here. And then with your exhale, you'll slide yourself forward to a plank pose. You'll drop your knees down, take another breath in this plank, slide your shoulders forward past your wrists, and then with your exhale, you'll lower all the way down to the ground in one flat piece. So easing yourself onto the floor. And from this position on the floor, you're gonna take your arms out to a big V shape in front of you. And then you're gonna slide your right knee out and up to the right. So your toes are facing the right side of the mat. It's almost like you're coming into a half frog shape here. And then you'll bend into your left knee like you were trying to kick your own left side butt cheek. You'll bend into your left elbow, so you bring the palm of your hand underneath your forehead for a little extra support or a little extra cushioning. And then you'll reach your right fingertips back towards your left foot. So finding a very, very gentle twist here that helps you deepen the stretch in the front of the left hip, in the front of the left thigh. And you might notice here that your right hip bone kind of lifts up away from the ground, and that's very much normal. You don't have to force or jam that right hip down, but instead just think about softening your right hip towards the ground. You don't need to try to control it so much. Notice any part of your body that tries to kind of clench up in reaction to this shape. Any part of your body that's resisting the opening. Let your breathing be soft in this pose, so you don't have to worry this time about lengthening the exhale or the inhale. Try to keep them balanced. And for the next few moments, in respect for that balance, I want you to think about pressing your pubic bone down towards the ground and lengthening your tailbone towards the back of the mat so you truly find balance between the front and back planes of the torso. In yin, this position is called cat pulling its own tail. Good. So if you can, you might invite your left heel in even closer towards your left side glute. And then you'll very gently release that foot. You'll let your left foot come towards the back of the mat again. You'll extend your right fingertips forward, extend your left fingertips forward, and then very gently slide your right foot back to meet your left foot. So you're kind of in this big starfish shape again. This time around, you're gonna bring your left knee out and up to the left. And know that if you aren't wearing long pants, if your skin is flat on a hardwood floor or a tile floor, it might behoove you to find a little cushioning, maybe a blanket underneath that left knee. And we truly wanna be sure that that left knee, that left leg comes out to two 90-degree bends, the first one being at the hip. So the knee comes out just as high as the hip. And then the ankle, to establish that second 90-degree bend in the knee, comes out just as wide as the knee. The toes are facing to the left. Yes, exactly. And then you bend into your right elbow, make a little pillow for your face. Bend into your right knee like you're trying to kick your own butt. And then reach back with your left fingertips for your right foot or your right ankle. And you'll very gently let your left hip release down towards the floor without pushing, without forcing, without trying too hard. Unlike the last two shapes, you allow your breath to be very neutral and very balanced here. And to aid in that balance, you think about pressing your pubic bone down and lengthening your tailbone back so you keep some containment in the front body without the compression of the back body. Make sure that you are still breathing here. So often when we find ourselves in these positions of uncomfortability, we tend to stop breathing. So try to stay with it, try to keep it continuous. And for these last few moments, you might work to draw your right heel in even closer towards your right side glute. And then in your own time, you'll release your right foot back. You'll slide left foot back to meet the right foot. Slide both arms out in front of you for a moment, and then find some pressure down through the palms of your hands. Start to activate, start to wake up your arms a little bit more. And then you'll begin to activate your lower body as well, so you'll really forcefully press the tops of your feet down onto the ground. Engage your thighs so your kneecaps lift up. Press your pubic bone towards the floor as your tailbone lengthens back, and then using the force of your hands on the ground, you'll begin to walk your hands in a little bit closer towards your body, keeping your elbows straight and just pulling your head, neck, and chest up away from the floor. So coming into a very gentle cobra here. Remember, the lower body stays active. The pubic bone is pressing down and the tailbone is lengthening back, so you take this arch out of the lowest part of the back. You force it more into the uppermost part. Take one more breath in here. And then you'll exhale and release yourself down. You can stack one hand on top of the other hand underneath your forehead. And then find a little wiggling your hips from side to side like you're wagging your imaginary tail. And then we'll come into it one more time. So bring your arms out to that T shape. Find pressure down through the palms of your hands. Find pressure down through the tops of your feet. And then keeping your arms activated and straight, you'll slowly begin to walk yourself in. Lifting your chest up, maybe just a tiny bit higher this time. If you're feeling this in your lower back, you've gone a little too far. And I really want you guys to think about here getting out of your shoulders. So you're drawing your shoulder blades down your back away from your ears. Think about pulling your chest forward, through, and up. And for our last few breaths here, focus on lengthening each inhale. So you take a long breath in. You exhale and just let it go. A long breath in. You exhale and just release it. One more long breath in. Exhale, slowly lay yourself back down again. You can stack one hand on top of the other hand underneath your forehead. Give your hips a little wiggle from side to side again. Wag your imaginary tail. And as you make your way into stillness, you'll bring your arms out into that V shape again. We'll take one more cobra pose just to round out the back bending portion of our practice. So activate your legs, engage your thighs, pubic bone presses down, tailbone lengthens back. You press through the palms of your hands and slowly start to lift your head, neck, and chest up away from the ground. And maybe this time you go a little bit higher than you did the last time around. So this would maybe be the highest, the biggest back bend of your whole practice so far. One more time, we're focusing on lengthening each inhale more than the exhale in this specific shape. So you take a full deep breath in, you try to squeeze it out a little bit longer, and then you exhale and just release it. You take a big breath in, filling all the way up to full capacity. You exhale and let it go. One more big breath in. This time as you exhale, you'll very gently lay yourself back down. You'll stack one hand on top of the other hand, make a little pillow for your face, wag your imaginary tail. And then you'll take your hands to frame your chest. You'll press yourself up onto all fours. And from all fours, you can find that wiggling your hips again from side to side, maybe circling them around, maybe slithering your spine like a snake or finding more of a cat-cow shape. And then you'll let your hips sink over to one side and you'll swing your legs around in front of you. You'll bend into your knees so the soles of your feet find the ground. Your hands will come back behind your body, and then you'll very gently let your knees fall from side to side. And now just to complete the practice, just to really round it out, we're going to find one more forward fold. So if you know that you have pretty tight hamstrings or a very sensitive lower back, I want you to find your two pillows or your bolsters or your blanket and slide it underneath your knees so you have a lot of extra cushioning and a lot of extra support. Otherwise, if you don't need to have that bend in your knees, if your hamstrings are already feeling pretty open or you know you're pretty flexible, you're going to let your legs lengthen out in front of you. Your feet are going to be about inner hip distance apart, but you'll let the legs relax so the toes kind of fall away from each other, the knees kind of fall away from each other. If you're noticing that your lower back is already rounding here, if there's more weight back on your sitting bones than there is on your pubic bone, I want you to elevate your seat up on a pillow or up on a blanket, just enough that you can find that tilt in your pelvis forward so the pubic bone moves down in space, the sitting bones revolve back. And now with the legs still nice and relaxed, you're going to take your fingertips to the ground beside you and just work to find a lengthened spine. So you lift the crown of your head up towards the sky. You let your shoulders relax down your back away from your ears. And now maintaining that length in your spine, you're going to begin to walk yourself forward. So maintaining the length, staying with it. And when you get to that place, when you get to that edge where you feel like you can't really go any further, keep your legs relaxed. You'll let your upper body round and relax down, maybe using the support of one or two blocks underneath your forehead or even a few pillows underneath your forehead. And now you give your entire body permission to relax and release. And so in this shape, because it is a forward fold, we're all gonna focus on lengthening the exhale just to keep it in balance from that last back bend that we did. So you'll take a very easeful breath in. And then you'll exhale and imagine the weight of your body getting heavier. You'll take a very easy breath in. You'll exhale and imagine the weight of your body getting heavier. You lengthen that breath out. Once your lungs are completely empty, you take a normal breath in. You slowly exhale. And you'll take a few more breaths here, just like this. As you breathe here, think about how you can release, how you can relax a little bit more. If there's any part of your body that is holding on right now that doesn't need to be holding on. And now, keeping that same awareness of your breath, you'll find pressure in the palms of your hands down and slowly, vertebra by vertebra, begin to bring yourself back up. And once you're upright, you can slide your hands to your knee pits, just beneath your knees. And draw your knees up so the soles of your feet find the ground again. You put a bend into them if they were straight. And then you might need to kind of scoot yourself forward on the mat just a bit, just enough that you can lay down in a very easeful way. And we want to be sure that the body is super comfortable here. So if you are someone who is experiencing tightness or tension in the lower back at the beginning portion of the practice, it might be a good idea to slide a pillow or a bolster underneath your knees. And then I almost always put a pillow underneath my head here as well, just to give the back of my neck a little extra support. And like I said in the beginning of the practice, you do want to be sure that your body is a comfortable temperature. If it's too cold, that's going to pull your awareness away from the practice. You'll begin to lose focus. And so you'll cover yourself evenly with a blanket and be very meticulous with tucking yourself in. So rather than just throwing a blanket over yourself, you take the time and care that you would tucking in a small child that you love. You have some options for how exactly the body lands here. You can either let the palms of your hands face up beside you like they would in a traditional Shavasana shape, or you can alternatively bring one hand to your belly and one hand to your chest. Just make sure that your hands are on their own respective sides, that they're not crossing over the midline. And now begin to draw your awareness inward. Focusing on the pattern of your breath, the pattern of your breathing. And if lately you've been finding yourself a bit more lethargic, a little more heavy, a little more depressed in your day-to-day life, you'll work to lengthen each inhale. So the exhale happens naturally, it happens on its own, but each inhale is lengthened. But if you've been feeling yourself kind of spaced out, a little frantic, a little burnt out, overworked, you'll work to lengthen each exhale. Let the inhale come on its own, but focus on lengthening each breath out. And try to stay with it. Even if your mind starts to kind of pull you somewhere else, you rein it back in again. If you need energy, you lengthen each inhale. If you need to unwind, you lengthen each exhale. And then you'll let go of that intentional breath. And you'll focus on just the way your breath moves up and down the channel of your nostrils. And you'll begin to count each cycle of breath backwards, starting with the number 11. So it'll be 11 inhale. 11 exhale, 10 inhale, 10 exhale, and so on and so on and so on, all the way down to 1. If you lose count, you go back and start over again. If you finish before I do, you go back and start over again. Now you'll let go of your count wherever you are. And in this more focused and peaceful place, you'll imagine the tension of your body dissipating and melting outward. As if every single cell in your body could spread apart like water being poured onto a table. And as you find yourself releasing the boundaries and structures of control, You observe the way it feels to be spacious and relaxed here. And the feeling of the crown of your head, the back of your head, your eyebrows, your eyes, your cheeks and your ears, nostrils, lips. Feel your chin and jaw, your neck, your collarbones, and your chest. From your shoulders, feel down to your upper arms, your elbows, your forearms, wrists, palms of your hands, backs of your hands, and all 10 fingers. From the tips of your fingers, draw your awareness back up again through the arms to the shoulders, and then begin to feel down into your rib cage. Feel down into your belly. Feel down into your pelvis. Your hips, your thighs, knees, shins, and calves. Feel both of your ankles, the tops of your feet, and all 10 of your toes. And from the tips of your toes, draw your awareness over the soles of your feet to your heels. And allow your awareness to move up the backs of the legs to the back of your pelvis, to your tailbone and sacrum. Your lower back, middle back, and upper back. Now feel the back of your neck. And from the back of your neck, feel all the way down again to your tailbone. And imagine a silvery cord running down the middle of your spine. Glowing and radiant. Imagine this cord pulsating light outward in every direction. Illuminating your entire body, your entire being, filled with light. And from this place, let your attention become more and more aware of the sensory experience of your body. The feeling of the blanket wrapped over you and the way your breath moves you into and away from that blanket. The sensation of air touching your face, the sounds that you hear in the space around you. And as you feel ready, you'll begin to move your body around, begin to wake yourself back up again in any way that you feel called to. Gather your knees into your chest. Give them a little squeeze as you roll over onto one side. And from that side, you'll keep your eyes closed, but press down through your hands and bring yourself up onto a seated position, any seated position that you feel called to. Let the palms of your hands come to touch at the center of your chest. Release your chin down. Namaste.